Watching the Cup of Dreams here, and possibly for the last time for this particular edition, and I'm here from Ahmedabad. And if you are a fan of the Indian cricket team, you're not a happy one, because a team that remained undefeated, a team that was coming in absolutely as favourites for this Cricket World Cup in Ahmedabad, this final against Australia, it has ended up on the losing side. And what a sort of turn of events this has been, really. If you look at both these sides, in India and in Australia, India coming into this final, they really had a cracker of a tournament. I think this was possibly the one edition where you saw the best of the Indian cricket team. It was a team that was that had carried the dreams of billions of fans all over the world, and they displayed the sort of the kind of cricket that really is a highlight of a champion side until this particular final. And contrastingly, a team like Australia, and you always talk about Australia being contenders for a World Cup trophy, contenders to lift a World Cup title, because they just know how to lift themselves up and play that sort of a cricket when it really matters. You always talk about Australia in that vein because they are a side that has won that many number of titles. They are a team that is successful at the international level, at a World Cup stage consistently. And with India, you always have the feeling of they're always coming close but not quite. And this time there were thoughts of that possibly overturning itself, because just purely by the way the team was playing leading up to this tournament, leading up to the final of the World Cup, the batting was looking in top shape. Everyone was coming in with good runs at key occasions. You didn't have just one consistent performer throughout. You had different batters, different bowlers, different performers standing up and counting, getting counted. The bowling was undoubtedly the strongest in the entire tournament, and they've proved that time and again. Contrastingly, Australia, that always has that tag of being champions, that always has the tag of being title contenders, started pretty horribly, started their campaign rather slowly, with everyone really looking just about average. The famed bowling lineup not really delivering the kind of fiery performances that you always think it to have. And how gradually and magnificently have they built their momentum through this tournament, coming into the final again, good on form, with 8 wins on the trot. You know, if you remember some days ago, we did a special show where we spoke about how is Australia the team that can possibly beat India or put India in trouble. We spoke about that after that magical match against Afghanistan, which I probably would now in hindsight say was that turning point for them, where everything really went on an upswing thereafter. Sure, there were a few performances that really didn't live up to the kind of name or pedigree that they always come in with, like a Steve Smith. You always think Steve Smith means a lot of runs, especially on this big match moments, but they really didn't need that. They had other performers, they had others stepping in here to deliver. You know, a lot of talking points emerging from this particular final, emerging from this particular tournament, and I'll come to that one by one. Let's first decode the Indian cricket team, right? I mean, this is the team that was coming into this final as champions. Where did they really lose the plot over here? There are a few places where you would call it that. There are a few places that you could point out and say, maybe they missed a trick or two here. Let's take it one step at a time. The toss was a good one for Australia to win, because they made a very bold decision to bowl first. As soon as the toss was lost, and you could sense it, the crowd went absolutely silent, expecting Australia and Pat Cummins to say we're going to have a bat first. And then when they heard Pat say he's going to bowl, the entire crowd went, wow, okay, we're in with a chance now, because you don't really particularly choose to chase in a World Cup final. You're always going to be under the pump, and especially in a sort of a venue with a pitch that you know is not going to be a high scoring one, or at least not a run feast. And it did prove to be a little difficult, going by the way you saw the batters struggling. There were barely any runs flowing after a certain point. A lot of credit has to go to Australia there. But again, I'm going to come to that in a bit. The fact that again it was down to KL Rahul and Virat Kohli to stitch together something that would take India to a semblance of a conference score, but that didn't happen, right? I think KL Rahul, which was the most important wicket probably at that point, falling in the 41st over. And then you knew that with just barely 200 runs on the board, 10 overs left and hardly any of your top batters still at the crease and available, India was in a bit of a trouble. But even so, a target like 240 with the kind of bowling units that India was boasting of, you would reckon India would surely fancy its chances, going by just the way the conditions were possibly very difficult to bat on and to really go big on. But Australia again disproved that theory. We will get to that too, but when you look at the way India came out bowling, a lot was reliant on the way Bumrah would start it off, and he did come out very strong off the blocks. And at 43-47 for 3 at that point, with the key personnel at the top of the order for Australia, David Warner, Mitch Marsh, all of those guys who can really take the attack to the opposition and take a game away from them back in the pavilion, you would think India would surely fancy its chances, because at that point a little bit of more pressure, a little bit of more, let's not let Australia even take a single or two, because that is what could prove to be dangerous in the long run. A little bit of more wicket taking instinct, a little bit of more aggression or fire, or more clinical bowling at that stage. You could have turned things around. Maybe that's probably the biggest sore point in that place, where they didn't really put in that pressure. There wasn't that extra bit of the way that you attack everything as if your life depended on it, because it is just 240 and it's a big final, and you can't even let a single go by. You can't let a leg by go slide down and go to the 4. You can't let those little runs off, which is unfortunate. It's not bad fielding in some cases, it's unfortunate, but that just gives the momentum to the batting side, because that's 4 runs. It's not just 1 run, it's 4 runs, and it's not just 1 run, it is 1 run which is keeping the other person back on strike. And that's what and those wides and those leg bys, all of those things, it's not just about adding the runs to the total, it's about that confidence. You are taking a confidence away from the bowling side into your own camp, and it's just making you get your momentum going and start putting pressure all the more on the fielding side, which then begins to tell, because a pressure on a fielding side is that much more magnified than a pressure on the batting side, because the fielding side, it all just builds, right? You have one bad over, one bad delivery, and then it goes to the fielder, it goes to the captain, and then it permeates to the entire ground, and then you know that they're feeling the weight of it. I think that's what you probably could sense from the Indian units towards the end. You could sense the weight of the pressure and the weight of the loss on this particular side. I think that was what it was evident. The one positive, though, of course, you're seeing visuals of course of the entire team getting the runners-up medal right now, and it is heart-wrenching because this is a team that had a lot of expectations riding on them. You knew that there was so much put on their shoulders, and seeing someone like Rahul Dravid, who was part of that 2003 final, and a lot of that going down this road again, a repeat of the 2003 is what many would say. But yeah, when you see all of these, all of the Indian team, you're seeing Suryakumar Yadav coming in and receiving the medal, Rohit Sharma as well. How disappointing would it be for someone like him? Really, the kind of campaign that he's led from the front, selfless sort of a campaign. You saw a united Team India right from the beginning, with this vision of performing, of possibly coming back with that very elusive World Cup title. It would be heartbreaking, And for anyone, I don't want to just speak as someone who's covering the game here. I'm going to speak as someone who's probably covered the journey of this entire tournament, and you really feel for a team. But having said that, you always say yes, a team. It's almost never can you say that a team deserves to win, because the only team that really deserves to win is not a team that's played a tournament well, but it's a team that's playing well on that given day, which makes me come to Australia now. Why did Australia manage to win this? They just played like a true champion side. They play like a side that's coming and telling you, you hate me, you like me, I don't care, but I am the one who's going to win. And that's, you always talk about this team sledging. You always talk about this team, talking the talk, but that's because they follow up the talk with the walk. There's no point in playing those mind games, saying those words, or throwing down the gauntlet if you can't really fire the bullet in the right direction and aim for the bullseye, which is what they always do, and they follow up time and again. You always see this Aussie side being in your face, fierce, having great intensity, and saying all those things like they do, because you always feel that with some of the other sides, it's okay to they somehow miss following up the mind games or the talk that they say without the walk. But this team did it. Pat Cummins at the press conference came and said, we want to silence that 130,000 crowd. We want to silence them. Now, anyone else saying that will have to really have the guts to say it and not follow up. Because then you look like the person who came and said, I'm going to do this and not do it, right? I mean, there's one way of looking at it, but they did it. They followed that up. The way Pat Cummins led that bowling unit and came back with standout performances, and I'm going to read some of those figures for you just to know the impact of how their bowling completely crumbled the Indian batting, the backbone of the Indian batting right at the start, which is possibly the real winner today. Their bowling right at the top to crumble almost the entire lineup. It was just 3 crucial knocks. That of Rohit Sharma, of course, was dismissed to a stunning catch by Travis Head. We have to speak about him in just a bit. What key moment that was for the Aussie team, because that again changed the momentum completely. Virat Kohli, again, you can't score a 50 and then just like drop that and not stay till the end if you really have to give India a tough fight and a tough chance in this particular final. Rahul, 3 50s there, but the rest, no really big contributions there towards the end. Mitchell Starc, 3 for 55 in his 10 overs. Josh Hazlewood, 2 for 60. Glenn Maxwell, 1 for 35. Pat Cummins, 2 for 34. And in his 10 overs, what an amazing performance that was. He completely led from the front. Even the spinners when they came in. Glenn Maxwell, that key wicket again of Rohit Sharma, as we mentioned. Adam Zampa. These guys really choking the Indians towards the end and slowing it down. It wasn't easy to bat at that stage for sure. The pitch really had a bit of it and you could sense it. And there was obviously the talk of if the first 10 overs India is capable of putting that added pressure with added pressure on the Aussie lineup, it is still game on. But as you can see now, the Aussie team proudly coming and getting their medals, their championship medals, and truly so. Enough and more have to be said about this side. You always talk about a fighting spirit. You always talk about a champion team. They did 2 things today. They proved that you don't have to be the best team in the entire tournament to win a tournament. You just need to play good cricket on the day it truly matters, which is the last day. And you got to make sure you do just about enough to get yourself there. I think the strategy is clear. It's always simple. That's why they always win these big tournaments. They strategize and they play themselves out so well to pace themselves through a tournament, because being undefeated or really playing at your 120% throughout a tournament, especially in subcontinent, in these conditions is not easy. It's the hardest of surfaces. It's the hardest of terrain to be completely dominating right through from start to finish. So they really played to their plan. They really strategized. And the one key factor I got to talk about when we speak about the Aussie response, you've got Steve Smith coming in there, and of course Mitchell Starc, all the senior hands. They've seen success, they've tasted success, they know what it feels like, and it permeates through the entire group of all the younger ones as well. Someone like a Manas Labuschagne, who just came in because someone else got injured. The faith that they had, again another key aspect. Travis Head was injured before the World Cup. They made sure that he would recover in time. They carried him in his squad and they made sure he played, and boy, what a key contribution he's had and what a key tournament it's been for him. Man of the match in a semi-final, man of the match, player of the match in a final. How key has that been for Travis Head? Really, the knock of the particular match, the knock of this tournament for him. He will treasure this performance that he has given in, and what a standout performance that was. 137 in a World Cup chase in a final. And you can see Pat Cummins, the leader whom everyone's been talking about, of how he's calmly led the side. In fact, the only little comment that you saw him really make, apart from the snigger when he heard of England losing, is in that pre-match press conference where he speaks about wanting to silence the crowd, and you wonder if that's going to follow up with if the performance with the bat and ball is going to follow up. He's of course all smiles now, and why not? You just managed to be World Cup champions at an away ground in India with the entire crowd against you and no semblance of a massive support in your favour. And you've done it. You've lifted a World Cup trophy beating the favourites, India. Why wouldn't you be excited? You would be over the moon. And someone like Travis said, really, what a standout performance by someone like him. Coming in from an injury, like we were just saying, and playing the sort of knock to take the match away from India. I think his key partnership with Marnus Labuschagne, where he took those ones and twos, that's what made the difference. And then you keep thinking about that little bit of factor, right? You speak about captaincy, you speak about that touch. We saw a captain like Pat Cummins saying what he had to say and following it up, making those key bowling changes, leading from the front, building the pressure and playing under pressure himself so successfully. And then you see someone like Rohit, who did wonderfully well till now. Let's not take that away from him. But when it comes to a final, is there a thought of really that X factor not coming in? You know, you always speak about MS Dhoni. Why is he a successful captain for India? Because he believed in making things happen, especially when they were bowling and trying to defend a target. And he believed in taking the game deep when they were chasing. He had those strong beliefs. He always followed it up. There's a reason for something of that sort. You know, you always know that when it comes to the crunch matches, it's not just about doing the things that you know how to do really well. It's also about making things happen, doing something unexpected, pulling out something a little different to put the opposition in a bit of a question mark, to try and play a game of, I'm going to ask you questions. It's up to you to come up with the better answer and see if you can come up trumps. I think that's possibly something that was missing today, because when you saw Travis Head and Marnus just building that momentum, nothing happened right after that. Yes, we saw Jadeja come in, we saw Kuldeep coming in, spells of trying to put them quiet, but I guess in this sort of a situation when you're defending 240, the point is always to keep them at a constant pressure. At least just get that feeling, that sense of something's got to give. That one wicket, that one appeal. Of course, a couple of things didn't go India's way. There were a few reviews as well that didn't go India's way. You did feel that that was something that they were lacking. It's always risky in these conditions to go with a certain sort of a composition. There was always also a lot of talk of if our Ashwin would be in the 11, would things have been different had he been? We don't know. But yes, there was a lot of discussion of him possibly coming in, and we hear that that contemplation was on for a very long time to see if they wanted to make that change. They of course didn't. But yes, there's also a thought about not having that impetus that they needed while batting. You know, you did feel that while batting you want those extra runs, you want that odd boundary. Not having a boundary for the longest time towards the end, especially in a death overs in a final, you really expect more at that stage. So yes, it is sort of disappointing. It is, I'm sure, heartbreaking for so many fans who've been following India's dream run of sorts. I think if you always look back at this World Cup, even as Rohit Sharma said in that particular pre-match press conference, that what I want to leave the fans with is truckloads of memories that they will take back with them. So yes, coming back to the Indian batting, you know, nearly 100 deliveries with no boundaries. You got to question something like that. I mean, that automatically becomes pressure that's building up on the batting side. And then, of course, it is a little disappointing as well. This is, of course, Narendra Modi Cricket Stadium. So you will have the man himself coming in, and he is there at the stadium, waving across to all the fans as we're seeing him. He's accompanied by the BCCI officials. He's come in, of course, to preside over the closing ceremony, the presentation, as he's walked up onto the dais there. That's what we are seeing right now, visuals of Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself, coming in there accompanied by key BCCI officials and members there at the stadium at the end of the match. It would be fitting that he would be there to give away the final honours, and it goes, of course, to the Australian team. And as we're seeing Pat Cummins come in there, shaking his hands with the dignitaries present at the stage on that dais there in the stadium. And the trophy is being handed over to the Prime Minister, who very, very graciously gives it over to Pat Cummins, winner, the Australian team champions of 2023 Cricket World Cup. I mean, it's massive. I think this is a phenomenal moment for them, and for a lot of their players there in that lineup to experience something like this. They were coming into this tournament behind a 2-3 loss to South Africa, and the loss wasn't just a close 2-all, and then they were leading 2-0 in that 5-match series and then lost to South Africa 2-3, and they were heading in after losing to India at home in the ODI series, and then to come here and exact sweet revenge is just the perfect recipe for a team that knows how to lose the battles but win the war. You can see the entire team now ecstatic. They're shaking hands with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and then going on, of course, to celebrate this moment, cherish this moment, which would be special for so many of them who know how it is to win World Cups. David Warner, Steve Smith, they're all gathered together with the trophy there. Really special memories, this. I'm sure it would bring joy to so many of them just to know that the point of sport is to have the last laugh, is to win the last moment when the chips are really down, is to just come up trumps when you know the pressure is on you and when there's least expected of you. Well, your heart definitely goes out to the Indian cricket team, because they really played like a champion side up until today, up until this final, which unfortunately didn't go their way. And they would be humble enough to say, I'm pretty sure at the end of it all, that Australia deservedly have taken the World Cup title. They're deserved World Cup champions, 6th time there. A record number for a team at World Cup. You always are talking about how India is becoming a dominant side in white ball cricket, and they just came back to tell you, you cannot disregard the yellows. You cannot downplay the yellows. You cannot say that the yellows will not have the last say. You can see the entire support staff coming in there. Glenn Maxwell, how ecstatic would someone like him be? Always criticized for being a man who's inconsistent, a player who's never really put in those key performances at the key moment, and that's exactly what he did this tournament. A key 200 against Afghanistan to ensure that the team manages to go through to the last 4. I think someone like Adam Zampa, you always talk about the pace unit of Australia, and you're looking like at a young Adam Zampa saying, hey, we can perform. He equaled Mutai Muralidharan in his effort today as a spinner with the most number of wickets in a single World Cup edition. What an achievement by someone like Adam Zampa. The pace unit of Australia never really hit the right stride. They were just in and about. Hazelwood came in with a fabulous performance in the semi-final. And then, of course, in the final, the entire pace battery just stood up and completely overpowered that Indian batting lineup that has really stood up and delivered throughout the tournament to cover them and to completely dominate them in this contest. I think it's been just fabulous. So really, what an amazing performance there by the Australian team. If you're an Indian cricket fan, don't be disappointed, don't be disheartened. They lost to eventual champions. They lost to someone who really knew how to put the right things in the right place and to just sort of finished the home run, right? You finished that dash. I think India really ran the marathon really well. If I could sort of put it down to one point, I think India really ran the marathon well, but probably the 100-meter dash just lost out towards the end to a team like Australia that just knows how to do the big matches really well. Come the big moments, they always stand up and are counted. That's how I'm going to sort of wrap this up here today. We hope you really enjoyed our journey here at the Cup of Dreams that we've been getting you exclusively from throughout this tournament at various venues, following India's tryst and hoping that it would be a tryst with destiny. But hey, ultimately you talk about sport being the true champion. I know it's cliched, but it possibly holds true right here. That's all we have here from Ahmedabad. We really hope you enjoyed our coverage here so far. Thank you so much. We will, of course, be seeing you, as we always do, tomorrow on First Sports. So do not forget to join in as we decode the final and the tournament, as it were, for the Cricket World Cup, for especially all the stakeholders of this sport. Thank you so much for joining in. Thanks a lot then. Goodbye and do take care. Have a lovely, lovely rest of the Sunday.